to introduce to you our first speaker, which is Dr. Magalie Krieger, who has worked at the Institute Jules Bordet since 2008. The Institute Jules Bordet is now part of the Hôpital Universitaire de Bruxelles, together with Erasmus Hospital and the Queen Fabiola Children's University Hospital. Magalie is Associate Head of the CTSU Operations and Quality Management Manager, and CTSU is the Clinical Trial Support Unit, which is part of the Clinical Trials Center. She first started as a data manager for clinical trials that were sponsored by pharmaceutical companies, and then moved to a position of quality control supervisor to become in 2015 the quality manager of the CTSU, and in 2019 the associate head of the CTSU operations. Since 2022, Magalie is also the team leader of the data management unit of the CTSU. Today, Magalie supports collaborations, communication, coordination, and prioritization between CTSU teams, and she manages operational workflows. In close collaboration with those CTSU teams, Magalie manages transversal projects aiming to develop and improve CTSU operational workflows and study tools. As a quality manager, she develops, performs, and manages quality assurance activities. She and her team are supporting the CTSU team in the development and improvement of their processes and documents to meet the CTSU quality standards, regulatory requirement, and external partners' expectation. With a background in biology and physics applied to radiology and medicine, Magalie understands the challenges and specificities of clinical research. Moreover, she enjoys working in a very challenging organization focused on helping patients suffering from cancer. And with this, I stop share my screen and I welcome you, Magalie. I see you, and you can start sharing your screen and start the presentation.
I will do that. Okay, let me share my screen. I'm going to share this one. Could you see it? Yeah, okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. I will talk a little bit with you about the evolution of clinical trial conduct. As Hilde just presented me, I'm working for the Hôpital Universitaire of Brussels. And I will try to guide you, if my mouse is working. Yeah. I will start with a short introduction about clinical trials because I think it's always good to all speak about the same thing. So it's just to have some common knowledge about what we are going to talk about. Then a little bit information about evolution of in clinical trial challenges, and we will end up with a short take-home message. So if you just need to remind the last topic, it's fine. But anyway, you're going to get the slide. So if you want to go deeper into the detail, you can do it later. Okay, so let's move on with the introduction. So what is clinical research? I think the first thing we need to do is really to define what we are going to talk about. So we're talking about medical research on human subject. So I'm focusing only when human subjects are involved in a clinical study. So clinical study, if we just want to summarize it, is answering a question by generating data. And this data will allow us to say, okay, my hypothesis was okay, or my hypothesis was not okay. So what's the next step? And the kind of question we are usually asking in clinical trials, it's related to improving or validating the effectiveness of prevention methods. So we want to avoid the disease to happen. Or understanding a medical condition. Sometimes patients are ill and we just need to understand and to go into detail about the illness. Investigating the cause of this, so we know what's happening with the disease, but what are the causes so we can maybe act on this cause, and improving or validating diagnostic and treatment methods, which is, to be honest, the most part of clinical trial run in the world are really investigating treatment methods. This is the highest number of clinical trial within the world. So Now we know all what we're talking about. In clinical research, we have different phase. So you really need to understand that clinical research is something that is really complex and highly regulated. So you cannot decide today, I will do clinical research. This is not the way it works. You have really to follow some strict policies, regulation, laws, and a good practice in order to run clinical research. And keep in mind that it could take around 10 to 12 years just to go through all the different phases in a clinical study. So if you want to start with the beginning and you want to finish with phase 4 clinical trial, then you have you need probably 10 up to 12 years. And in oncology, it's even longer, because some clinical trial in phase 3, for example, you can have 10 years follow-up of patient. So the patient is not receiving any more treatment, but you still will continue to follow up the patient in order to see any rare or a long-term adverse event. So imagine just a little bit the scale of this clinical research. And just to provide you with an overview, it's around 10% of the medicinal product that starts the cycle that go through it successfully. A lot of them will stop in the middle or will stop with the preclinical phase because it's too toxic, because it's not efficient enough to be given to patient population. So it's a challenge. It's it's a challenging environment. So just to go through the slide, you don't have to remember all these things, but you can just see a gradation in the number of patients that will be involved in the clinical trial phase. So the first one, it's the preclinical. So it's usually using animals model or animals in order to define the safety of the molecule. So it's the first, and after the preclinical phase, you start with the first in human phase. Then after you have the phase 1. Okay, we talk about volunteers, but it's always volunteer. I mean, you will not never oblige a patient to enter in a clinical trial. That's the rule and the informed consent form. But again, in some specific therapeutic areas, you can have people without the illness that will be in the phase 1. For example, in oncology, you will never give any chemotherapy or any treatment against cancer to patients without cancer. So it's a little bit different between the different therapeutic area, but in phase 1, you have few patients, and your goal is really to study within the body the pharmacokinetics of the medication, the pharmacodynamics, so when how the drug is integrate in the body, or it's eliminated for the body if you have the risk to have a high concentration of the medicinal product in one part of the body. So it's all these questions that are answered in phase 1 trials. And it's really a focus on the safety and tolerability. It's what we call the dose limiting toxicity. We're increasing the dose, and when we reach a level of toxicity that is not acceptable, we go down one step. So it's phase 1. Phase 2, it's here you increase a little bit your population, and you already know the dose that you're going to give to the patient. So at this point, you will test the efficacy of a medication. You will see if you have sign or you can really see that the medication is improving the patient outcome. Phase 3, you're going a little bit bigger with your patient population, and here you're looking for really an efficacy of your medication, and you try to, in a lot of trials, you have randomization between the new treatment and the standard of care. So you will really compare the two sets of medication and see if your new medication is more effective than the current standard of care. And also, I was talking a little bit before about phase 3 trials. In oncology, for example, you will have long follow-up period because you will look for the patient, you will see the patient in consultation like for 10 years. It's one visit a year. It's not a lot for a patient, but it's still for 10 years. And phase 4 trials, it's really The medication is usually given to the large population. It's after the market authorization approval. And it's really looking for rare or long-term adverse event. It's what we call pharmacovigilance follow-up of a drug. So don't remember all this information, just you have the different phase and a few introduction about what it's about. So if I just took this example, it's not complete, it's just an example of what's going on in a clinical trial, so you can see a little bit the different step, and you will understand what I'm talking later on. So here it's the short example of everything that needs to be done if you want to start to run a clinical trials. So you have different steps, and you have some activity that needs to be done in parallel, and some that are trigger for other activities. So it's go from the timelines management up to the public registry management, going through the protocol development, the risk assessment, and all these activities that needs to be done. And I will just highlight one step, which is the approvals. So you cannot start running a clinical trials using, with a human being without getting the approbation, the approval from the authorities. It's the competent authorities and it's the ethic committees. So this is a step that is really important for everyone that is running clinical trials, because this needs to be done for all the trials. And you will see later on that this is one of the topic we have to work on and we have to keep attention to in Belgium, because we used to have some competitiveness on this topic, but it's now getting a little bit less interesting for us. So this is a little bit the introduction about clinical trial. I hope I was not too long, and will be able to follow me with the different topic I'm going to address. Hilde, how do you proceed? Do you have question at the end, or do you prefer to have the question around?
Students know that when they have questions, they can type them in the chat. If they want to ask them live, they'll be promoted to ask it to you directly. Otherwise, I will come and interfere.
Okay, that's perfect.
So if there are questions,
when
okay,
I'm
no,
looking
you
at
don't need to. We take into account everything. And for the participants in the program, don't hesitate to raise your questions in the chat, and then we'll continue.
That's perfect. So let me know if I have to answer questions. So I will go on, and I keep some time at the end for the questions. So don't be afraid. It's not going to be 45 minutes. It's going to be like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then we have time for the question. Okay, so going on with the evolution, it's an highly regulated field of work. So one of the main policies that everyone has to follow in clinical research is what we call the good clinical practice. It started a long time ago, as you can see, in 96, with the first version. And it was really a step forward, because before this, if you want to provide a medication worldwide, you have to go first to the US regulator. Then you have to do a new submission to the Japanese one. Then you have to go to the European one. So it was just repeating action. And at some time they say, okay, this is not efficient. Let's try to make it everything harmonized and to have like international standard. And they come with the GCP, the R1, so the first version 1. And it was really focusing on getting credible, accurate data in order to make sure that they can take a decision and approve a medication that will effectively work and was tested in a good condition. And then also they really want to emphasize and put at the beginning the subject rights, safety, and well-being. This was really something that come with the Declaration of Helsinki, with all the problem with the Nazi time and so on. So I'm not going to enter in the history, which is really interesting if you want to have a look at this. but it's not the goal. So they come up with the first version of the GCP, and it was really a guidelines. So no obligation to follow it, but it was integrated in the law of many countries. So at the end, you have to follow it. 20 years later, they come with the second version. So it's take a little bit of time for them to review it because it's a huge document and you have to make everyone around the table and find solution that will be okay for everyone. So sometimes, it can take some time. So just looking at the time we have a government in Belgium, 20 years, it's not so big. So the second version was oriented with the risk because before every single activity with a clinical trial was done and controlled and was taking the same way and effort for the team, which was really huge for everyone. That costed a lot. And so they want to see if it's not possible to have more a risk-based approach. And in the between, there have been some study looking, for example, at what we call the source data verification. So source data verification, it's you go in the hospital, you take the patient record and you look at what was entered in the case report form and you compare both. If you find some discrepancy, then you have to ask the site to explain the discrepancy or correct. Before, it was done for every single data in the case report form, in the dossier that the sponsor is using to make the conclusion. So it was taking ages and effort for everyone. Now, what we are implementing with the second version of the GCP, we're focusing only on the key data. What does it mean? Key data, it's really a data that you will use for your analysis. And we integrate within this key data also the data that will confirm the key data. We're still getting a security about this. We have the key data and we have what we call the additional data linked to the key data. So they changed a little bit this, and it was really, it's my opinion, but the opinion of a lot of people, really an improvement in the way clinical trials were running. And also they integrate new technology because in 96, it was more paper CRF, it was more paper documentation, which was also a burden for everyone, but we go on with electronic trial master file or electronic data capture system. When I start in the clinical trial, I used to receive paper CRF fax by the different hospitals around the world. Now we all using web-based applications that are validated with a high level of security. But it was not integrated in the GCP, so this changed in the R2. And lucky us, in this year, we received the third version. And this one is, again, it changed completely the document. They redesigned the whole document. The principles are almost the same. I'm just going to show you this in a few minutes. But it was really a focus on quality by design, meaning when you build your protocol, so it's the first step of your clinical trial, when you think about your idea of clinical trial, you also have to think about the quality. How will you address the quality of your clinical trials? What will be your indicator? What will be your critical path within your clinical trial? So it's always focusing on quality, and it's also, again, adding a layer of risk proportionate. So meaning in all the activity done within the clinical trials, you have to think about the risk. Risk assessment is something that is done for every activity. And again, we moving on with the technology. They also address some new technology that are available within the clinical trial. And I'm thinking, just to give you an example, in clinical trial in oncology, for example, you have always a huge part which is linked to the quality of life. We want to treat patient, but we still want the patient to feel comfortable and the medication to allow them to have a normal life if it's possible. But we want to keep the impact on the patient life as low as possible. So we integrate in a clinical trial quality of life questionnaire. And before, it was done on paper. And so the patient was completing the questionnaire on paper, and the nurses in the hospital was integrating this data within the data capture system, which was a burden for the site, was a source of error because sometimes could have been missing. So now we more and more using tablets in order to get this, or just on the smartphone of the patient. The patient can directly complete the questionnaire on his phone. But this is introducing new problems, like you have the regulation for the data privacy. So you have to make sure that you cannot access any other data on the patient phone. So this is things that were integrated in the R3. It's sometimes a little bit vague, but it's still putting on the table some guidance to take this into account. But it's quite new. It was released in January, and it will be fully effective in July. So now we are completely in the time for the implementation, for the adaptation of a lot of guidance for the site and for the sponsor in order to comply with this new requirement. It's a challenge. So just a few words about the principle, the good clinical practice. It's 11 principles, and I'm just going to focus on the 2 new ones. They remove 2 and they add 2 new ones. The one is risk proportionate. Before it was in every section of the R2, so the second version of the GCP. Now it's a full principle, so it's getting more on the front side. And then it's the role and responsibility, because in a lot of clinical trial activity, you can outsource some activities. It could be the sponsor that will delegate some information, some task to a CRO. It's a clinical research organization, so it's a vendor that will take care of, for example, the delivery of the medication between the different hospitals, or it could be the site. Like a lot of patients will receive the treatment at home. So it's what we call the mobile nursing, but still it's the site. So it's the physician of the patient that will accept to delegate some activity to someone external to his organization. Again, these need to be formalized. This need to be written. They love all the documentation. If it's not written, it means it doesn't exist. So if you're getting an inspection, it's your fault you're getting a findings, and you might not be able to do new clinical trials. It's the extreme situation. It's not happening a lot, but still it's a risk that an organization needs to think about. But so role and responsibility, now it's really clearly defined that it should be documented, and it should be a contract between the vendor and the sponsor, or the vendor and the site. So everyone since the beginning know what their responsibility, which I think could be really good. So for the implementation, so their goal, it's always nice goal. Huh? It's not new. It's to facilitate innovation in the design and the conduct, and to always, again, ensure the patient safety. But everyone running clinical trial wants to do this. It's not something that the regulator wants. It's a common goal of all the people working in clinical trials. And I just try to highlight for you 4 topics that will be a challenge for the investigator and the sponsor, because we're talking about challenges in an evolution in clinical trial. So this update of role and responsibility, it's impacting the site, but also the sponsor. And it's clearly written that if the sponsor is delegating any activity to a CRO, at the end of the day, it's still a sponsor that is responsible for the activity. So meaning the sponsor will delegate some activity, but will also have to follow up with the delegated CRO that the activity are done. So it means receiving feedback from them, having recurrent meeting with them, knowing about any issue that could occur with an activity. So it's still putting a little bit of more stress and pressure on the sponsor. For the site, again, now it's the possibility for a site to delegate some activity. Before, it was not really correctly written in the R2. But now in the R3, it's clearly said that it's possible, but again, we need a contract. Quality by design it's something that was already discussed within the sponsor, especially the pharma sponsor, but now it's really for everyone, that we have to reinforce this. We have to think about quality since the beginning. I don't know if you already work in a quality department. I'm quality manager, so I know what it is. Each time you're talking about quality, people say, "Oh no, something more to do. I don't have time. I don't want to do this. This is not. It's just a burden for me." No, it's not a burden. It's just a goal for everyone, and it needs to be integrated since the beginning in a clinical trial. So it's for both site and sponsor, they need to do this. Risk-based monitoring, risk-based management. So it should be done for both. And again, it should start as soon as possible. So since the beginning, also for the site initiation visit, so nothing at start at site, but you start to train the site staff, then you have to think about risk-based. Like an example, is the site used to work with this medication? Is it the first trial that the site will do with us? Do we know the staff? Are there a specific location or specific team that will be work within the clinical trial? This is all question you have to ask yourself and you have to take into account in your plan. And data integrity, it's something that it's really important, because if you're looking at the frequently problem that are raised during inspection at site, it's usually documentation. They cannot find the initial document, they cannot find the medical note, they are not available in the patient file. All these kind of findings they want to address with the R3. So it's something that changed since my last year during my presentation, because now we have this R3, which is a huge challenge for the site. And just for you to think about this, sponsor, usually when we talk about sponsor of clinical trial, we talk about pharma company, which is correct. Site, we always think about hospital and site staff. It's 80% of the clinical trial are sponsored by pharma company, but you have 20% of trials that are sponsored by hospital, university. So in this case, and it's a case for the Institut Jules Bordet, we can be the sponsor and the site. So meaning for one clinical trials, we have to take care of the both activities and the both responsibility. So it's not possible to have the same team doing both. We want to avoid this in Bordet, because you cannot be in one side and the other side of the CRF, as we call it. So you cannot be the sponsor and the site. So it's different team, but still the same organization is going to do the whole trial as a sponsor and as a site. Like the study nurse are within one unit, and the regulator, so the person that will talk with the regulation, the competent authority, is in another team. But you can have to assume both responsibility. It's what we call investigator-driven or investigator-initiated trials. It's 20% in totals.
Excuse me, may I ask you a question? I'm
Yes,
sorry for the interruption. At the beginning of your talk, you explained the different clinical trial phases, and I was wondering about the numbers that were written, whether or not this applies for medical drug or are the same for medical devices.
It's the same for medical devices, but sometimes you will couple some phase. Like you will have the phase 1 and the phase 2 together. You know, because you don't have this idea of doses. But still, you need to prove that it will be no problem with, if it's an implantable disease device, for example, that it will be no problem with that. Okay. And you have specific regulation for medical device. It's different if it's an external medical device or if it's an in vitro medical device. So you have different regulation and you have different rules to be followed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so moving on with another challenges and another evolution in the clinical trials. It's the red button I show you in the flow of the activity for clinical trials. It's the approval for the competent authorities. Again, you cannot run a clinical trial if you don't have this approval from the authorities. So before we have been through a huge evolution in this. It's take a lot of time. It's take between the introduction of the clinical trial regulation in 2022. No, it was in 2014. Here now it's fully applicable. So now all the clinical trials that are going to be run will be run on the clinical trial regulation. In between these two periods of time, we were running between directive and clinical trial regulation. It's take a lot of time because they want to have everything using a tools, a web-based tool, but it take a lot of time to get these tools ready and approved. So finally we go there. So it was a huge changes, and I'm just going to show you what changes it was. Before, if you want to run the trial in France, in Belgium, in Netherlands, in Germany, you have to enter a dossier to the competent authority in Belgium, in France, in Netherlands, in Italy, in blah, blah, blah. In all the countries you want to work with, you have to do a new dossier, which was quite a burden. And it was sometimes really difficult to manage because if the France, for example, was asking you to change something, you could change it for France, but it was not the same for Belgium. So you have to deal with 2 or 3 or 4 versions of a protocol, which was really complicated for the team. The European Commission, they decide that they want to have an harmonized regulation on clinical trial, meaning that if you want to run the trial in several countries, you will just do one dossier that will go through the European portal, and the portal will design a member state that will be the reporter. It could be France if you're running your trial in France, in Belgium, or in Italy, for example, or it could be Belgium or whatever. They decide this, and then it's this member state that will collect the comment from the other one. And so you have only one dossier to do, and you getting one answer for your clinical trial. That's the theory. It's really fine. It's really good. And we're all happy with this change, but it's take a lot of time to be put in place, and there's still some improvement to be done. And on this, you will see that there are also one specific drawback, that is the timelines related to this review. So, two big challenges so far, GCP and regulation. So if we're looking at the status currently, so it was in 2020 and 23 because it's a figure that I get from the Deloitte report. So it's not, we don't have yet the number for last year. We only know that for Belgium is increasing a little bit, but we don't have the figures. So if we are looking at this, you can clearly see that there are one top area in the world that is doing a lot of clinical trial. It's Western Pacific. So it's China, Australia, Japan. These countries are really active in the field of clinical trial. China is always at the top for this one. It's bigger than America, US, or Europe. And then you have Europe, and you have some other Africa. It's always at the bottom of the list. So you can compare worldwide the situation. And if we go making a focus on Europe, you will see that in Belgium, we're quite good. We are on the third position, on the second position. Denmark, it's better than us, but then it's Belgium, but it's decreasing. And you have Spain and Poland that are the two countries that are growing in this field. Now, if we compare the Belgian population within the European country, so it's the Belgian population, it's only 2.6% of the European population. So we are really small in the Europe. But still, if you're looking at the number of clinical trials we are running in the fourth therapeutic area, cancer, immune system disease, nervous system disease, and pediatric study, we are quite good for a small country as us. And oncology, cancer treatment, it's always a field that we are quite good in Belgium. Now, just focusing between the phase. So here we're talking only about medication. We're not talking about medical device. Medical device, it's more and more in the trials, but it's we don't have really figures on this because it's quite new and they need to be more work on the medical device. But in Belgium, compared to European, we are quite good in the phase 1. And this is something that was always like that. First in human study and phase 1 study, we're quite good in Belgium. Even if you're looking, it's decreasing a little bit. So we have to take care of that. We have to making sure that we are not losing our advantage in this field. And for the other one, we're quite comparable with Europe. So if you're looking at the total number of CTA, it's clinical trial application. So it's all the dossiers that are given to the competent authority in Belgium. And we will compare. So on this graph, it's the total number. You can see a decrease, and in the last 2 years, in 22 and 23, it was a bigger decrease than around the year. And for phase 1 and the first in human, it's also decreasing. So we're losing a little bit our advantage on this. And based on the feedback we receive from the competent authority, it seems that in 2014, it's increasing a little bit in Belgium. So we are on the way. So I don't have the figure. I don't know if it's going to be confirmed, but it seems that they're receiving more dossiers in 2024. So there's still hope. And if we're looking at the therapeutic area of this clinical trial application, you have a huge part which is cancer. It's all the other diseases that are not on the pie. You have also virus, cardiovascular, digestive, and respiratory tract infection. With the COVID, it was a lot of them with that. But cancer, it's really a big part. And as I'm working for Bordet, I'm just going to focus on this one. So looking at the clinical trial application in Belgium for cancer, you can clearly see that between 2023 and 2022, you have really a huge decrease. We have a peak in 2021, but then it's decreasing. And we need to try to understand why it decreased. So go back to the challenge. So if you're looking at this overview, you can see the difference between 2017 and 2023. You can see area we are improving, area we are losing our advantage. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but I want to focus on this one because it will explain a little bit why we have an issue with the startup timelines. You can see that between 2017 and 2023, it's decreased for 2 points, which is quite impressive. And it's linked basically to the clinical trial regulation. Just let me a little bit explain this. This is the timelines for a dossier to be reviewed by the competent authorities under the clinical trial regulation. So the top line, it's if you have no question, if your dossier is complete since the beginning. From my experience, it's never happened. Forget about this. It's just a theory, but there's still something that is missing. There's still a question raised by the authorities, and it's pretty good because it means they are looking at your dossier. So 16 days, it's never happened. But if you have to provide some new document, if you have to answer some question, then it could go up to 106 days. It seems okay, but if you compare this with the situation before under the directive, you can see a big difference. The minimum number were 28 and the maximum was 58. So we doubled the time to get the approval from the authorities, which is not really good. If you're thinking about a sponsor that want to run the clinical trial as fast as possible in order to get the drug on the market before his concurrent or the other company that is working on the same field. And just a small focus on the phase 1, because in Belgium, we have a specificity for phase 1 national monocentric study, which is a study that will, a phase 1 study that will run only in Belgium with one center. So like I'm taking an example, it's a clinical trial that will be run only in Bordeaux, for example, because we have the population for this clinical trial. So the trial, as it's a small subset of patients, could be run in one hospital. And before, it was 15 up to 45 days. Now, with the new regulation, we are minimum of 20 days. Forget about that, it's never happening, and 66 days. So it's not a huge difference, but still it's a difference for our sponsor. And if they can find a country that will go faster to get the approval, they will choose the country that go faster. And look at this, it's just a comparison between the US and Europe for three therapeutic areas: oncology, rare disease, and infection disease. And in all these situations, you can clearly see that US is faster than us. So if a sponsor has a limited time ahead of him, he wants the trial to run fast, he wants to get the approval as fast as possible, he will choose US and not Europe. But this is something that all the European countries, and especially Belgium, need to keep this in mind, that we are not working alone, we are within the world, and we have to compare with the other. Okay, so let's go choose another example of area we need to improve. It's new technology. You probably all heard about artificial intelligence this day, because it's the topic of the month, machine learning and so on. And so it's also impacting clinical trials. And with these two tables, I just want to show you that it's impacting not only the conduct of a clinical trial, it's impacting all the area of a clinical trials. So if we start with the study design, now we have what we call one size fits all. So in the protocol, we will try to describe all the situations that patient that will be integrated in the trial, including the trial, will encounter, which is, and each time you have to amend your protocol, keep in mind that you have to go through the authorities again. So you have the initial submission, and then each time you're changing something, you're changing your population, you're changing the evaluation that you will do on the patient, you're changing a site, you're adding an hospital in your trial, you're changing the principal investigator. All these activities need to be approved by the authority before you can make them happen in your trial. So what we will need to find a solution in the future, it's to be able to go faster with that. And maybe to try in the trial, in the protocol at the beginning, to think about something that could happen. I'm just taking you an example so you can follow me. In oncology, we usually taking sample, blood sample, urine sample, and all the sample you can imagine, which is usually a huge logistic to manage. And we making some analysis. Sometimes when you start your clinical trial, you don't know which analysis you can do, because the technology is not yet done. I'm thinking about DNA sequencing or this kind of things. You don't have all the technology available. So sometimes in trials, in the protocol, we are trying to put future research. So we will use the sample, but not describing exactly what we are going to do with the sample. And this is something that is not well received by the authorities. They want clearly to know from the beginning what we are going to do with the sample. So in the future, I think this is something that we need to really to think about and how we can manage this. Also, there are a lot of genetic data, a lot of genetic assessment that could be done for the trials. Now it's a lot of question about privacy, about ethical concern. I mean, if we're getting the DNA of a patient, what are we going to do with that? So it's really also for the regulatory point of view and for the ethical point of view, it's really how could we make it happen in the future that this is something that will be running smoothly in clinical trial. And it's also true about the patient recruitment. Patient, they're not only relying on the doctor now to be aware of clinical trial. They will know themselves how to go, and there are a lot of website you can find information about clinical trial. It's I put you an example here. It's Esperity, where patient can go there and can look for a clinical trial. So we have to think about the patient not like someone that we rely on the patient. They will also need to be more involved in the choose of the clinical trial, but in the running and the design of clinical trial. Okay, I need to speed up a little bit. So this is just, you can look at the slide later on. It's just example of new technology. It's go from personal medicine up to ePro. There are a lot of ePro. It's electronic patient report outcome. So via an application on the phone, the patient will report which adverse event is experiencing. So it goes directly to his physician. His physician can use this information to change the treatment, for example. This is something that is changing a little bit the way patient and physician will work together. And so the last one I will start discuss a little bit with you is, again, the patient recruitment. Patients are really part of a clinical trial. They are center of a clinical trials, but now they also want to be involved more in the design and the conduct. But let's talk first about the recruitment rate. And just if you compare again the same oncology, rare disease, and infection disease, and for FPI, it's first patient in. So it's the first patient that will start receiving the medication or the medical device within a trial. And LPI, it's last patient in. So it's when your recruitment is closed. It doesn't mean that your trial is closed. It's your recruitment is closed. Okay. And so if you're looking just at the flags, you can see that we are all in the same duration. There are countries that are quite good, and in all these therapeutic areas, Spain is one of the countries that is making the best. And why? If you're looking, it's because they really integrate the regulation within the law, and they really train the different sites in order to get dossier fast. The authorities in Spain are more trained on the new regulation. There are there are more people working in the authority, which makes the dossier being reviewed faster. And you have really experienced sites, hospital running clinical trials. So it's all show that to start a clinical trial in Spain, it could be faster than in other European countries. So one point we need to work on is the recruitment, and then the other one, it's including patients in the clinical trial. So they want to be part of the design of a clinical trial. They want to know about the different clinical trial, like getting easy information available for them. And they also want, and it's also something that we can use to train educated future patient to go within a clinical trial. Because if you're part of a clinical trial, you're not following exactly the same path as I would say a normal patient in an hospital. No, I would say a patient that is not in a clinical trial. So it's really it's not obligation, but it's things that are different for a patient in a clinical trial. And you have to know about something, and they can really be an asset to get this information to all the patients. So we all need to think about this and include them. And they're really now in the protocol. We want to also get the feedback from patient representative in order to see if the trial will be okay for them. And in some of our trials, we have what we call steering committee. So it's during the conduct of a clinical trial, we will have regular meeting with people. It's scientific, but it's also patient representative. So they can provide us with some insight from the patient about how it's going, the trial is going, if we can improve things. So this is something that we have to integrate in our way of conducting clinical trials. So take-home message. So how to get prepared for the future. You can see that everyone needs to do something. The biopharmaceutical companies, the government, the regulator, the hospital, and the university. It's a huge step that need to be, and I think this program, it's really well on this future. It's the training, the education of all the stakeholders. Everyone needs to stay aware and to stay informed about the changes, the new regulation, what needs to be taken into account, and to have specific forum in order to share information, to share some challenges and how people are getting better with this and moving forward with these challenges. So I think also for the regulator, they need to go further to think about how, okay, now this is the current situation. We have to deal with artificial intelligence. We have to deal with machine learning. How we are going to deal with that? Because if you want to run a trial with AI, you have to provide them with so many data about how the intelligence was built and how it was tested and how it's worked. And sometimes they just know. I mean, the people, they don't want to share this. So you cannot go forward with your trial. So which is a pity, I think. So we all need to think about how making this be used for a patient, because at the end of the day, we all want to treat patient and to cure patient. So if we want to do that, we have to take everything that is possible, but again, we have to regulate it. We have to think about implementation. And I think today it's going faster, so we need to be more people working on this topic. So just my conclusion is everyone is part of a clinical trial. It's not only the pharma company, it's not only the hospital, it's also the industry, it's the university, it's authorities, and it's the patient. Everyone needs to be working on the same goal and to be part of this journey that is a challenging but so interesting journey. So I hope you will one day be part of this clinical trial world. I think it's over. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Magalie. And actually, I was delighted to already see some of the things that I can definitely already invite the participants of this year's edition. Actually, we continuously work with alumni of our program. For example, the Asperity website that you refer to for patients to find clinical trials. It's being set up amongst others by Mitchell Silva, who followed our program, and you will meet, or the program participants will meet him during the annual event. And actually together, Mitch and I, we set up Upati Belgium to educate patients. So it's one world. And I'm super, super happy that you touch upon this need for patient awareness and broader patient education through platforms such as EPATIS or the TPP, which is the Vlaams Patiënten platform. This is crucial, as we said. patients are at the center, and indeed it's their data, and they own the data. And I'm happy that indeed another of our alumni participants, Tatiana Revenko, will discuss in half an hour how patients share their data and what is possible with as a secondary use. So I see you're already online, but let me maybe first ask the students, are there questions left? I see Ivana, you are still as a panelist here. So if you have some questions, don't hesitate to ask them. Right now, we have the experts here at your disposal, I would say. Otherwise, don't hesitate for those who don't have a question now, but sometimes it can pop up while reviewing the slides. Don't hesitate to send us your questions, and if we cannot provide you with the answer, we definitely discuss with the experts. So if there are no questions left.
Maybe I have one small question before we take a break.
Great.
Thank you for the talk. It was very, very interesting. You mentioned something, the difference in time point between Europe and US, and the reason why a lot of the sponsors are moving and starting their clinical trials in the US. But I think the price conducting a clinical trial is different when you compare the US market and Europe, and probably the reason why, luckily, a lot of the sponsors are staying in Europe. What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. You have to know that in clinical trials, the sponsor has to pay for everything. So if the patient is receiving a medication, if the patient need to go more frequently to the hospital, the sponsor need to pay for everything. And the only difference we have between the US and the European country, and it's true in Belgium, we have what we call an exemption. So if we are an academic center running an academic trials, we usually don't have to pay for all the visit that a patient is doing. Like, I'm taking an example. A patient is going every 6 months to see his physician because it's part of his normal care of his medication, of its treatment. We don't have to pay for this visit. If we adding extra visit, then we have to pay for this visit. So it could be interesting if you're running academic trial in the US. But in the US, the advantage also is that they are more advanced in the decentralized delivery of the medication. Like the patient can go to the drugstore to receive his medication, go home and take the medication alone. They are used to pay for more visit, for more, and it's true that at the end of the day, the cost of a clinical trial could be a little bit lower between US and Europe, but something maybe that could make a difference. It's when you're looking at the fee, so it's the amount of money that the sponsor will pay a physician in Europe and in the US, they're paying more the physician in the US than in Europe. So maybe you gain some money on the patient cost, but you're losing a little bit in the physician cost. But I'm not working for a pharma company, so I don't know the financial balance between both. But from my experience, because we used to run a trial with pharma company in Europe, in US and in Europe and worldwide, and we used to collect the data for them. So we managed the data for the whole trials. I know that there are these differences in terms of cost.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Ivana, for the question. And actually, we have this afternoon, as I told you, 2 people from Novartis being present. So potentially we could ask them more specific numbers or
I don't
the
know if they are
idea
going
that
to share.
no, indeed, it's always sensitive. But in any case, I will try to come back on this this afternoon. Are there any other questions left? Otherwise, I suppose that we go for a short break. Thank you so much, Magalie, for sharing your insights and for addressing the participants. This is really nice. Thank you, Ivana, for being actively involved in this session. Thank you. You're most welcome, Magalie, to stay with us after the break. We come back at 10:45 for then on data sharing and as well as in research methodologies in clinical research, notably involving the patient. So don't hesitate to come back and to listen to the other presenters.
Yeah. I just
For the
have a meeting
participants,
at 11, but I will probably jump in and out.
perfect, very nice. You're welcome. So for the others, we will reconvene at 10:45. Thank you.